welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another fountain pen review. I've just returned from St. Catharines, Ontario, just 10 minutes from beautiful Niagara Falls, Canada. Wynne and I took a vacation, visiting friends and family, and taking a nostalgic tour of places from our childhoods. I brought my new PenBBS 556 Galaxy piston filler and several other Galaxy finish pens. I'll do a review of this first new model from PenBBS in years, which I really love, with a couple of exceptions that I'll discuss. I'll also discuss how to fly with your fountain pens so you don't end up with an inky mess all over your carry-on. Let's take a look at this pen right now. Well, here we have another unboxing of a pen from China, but this is a very special pen from China because it's the first PenBBS fountain pen unboxing that I've done in a year and 4 months, and they finally come out with a new model. You may know that PenBBS is one of my favorite fountain pen companies in the world, but for the last year or so they've been fairly dormant when it comes to developing new models. Lots of nibs and things like that, but new models. So let's open this up and see what it is. And here's our box. It's a 556, and yes, those of you that had Galaxy in the pool have just one, self-esteem. Let's slide it out of the sleeve, and the typical PenBBS box, magnetic closure on the front, cardboard embossed with PenBBS. Don't bend these all the way back, folks. They only go to here. And we have a pen instruction card bookmark, which shows how to fill this pen in both English and Chinese. And here's the pen. Get it out of its condom. And there I have it. Oh, this is a nice Galaxy. Okay. I have fallen in love with PenBBS all over again. You guys rock. This is a new clip style. It looks like sort of a double seashell kind of shape with a taper on it. I like this. Wide cap band. Very nice. A PenBBS gold-plated steel nib in the typical PenBBS turned up Waverly style, which I so love. The beautiful PenBBS 556 piston filler in Galaxy. I love this pen already. Can you guess what ink I'm going to put in this? I can. Oh, this has come all the way from Australia. This has come from my good friend Paul. G'day, Doug. Here is the 556 Amber as a Cat in a fine nib. Hope you enjoy. Cheers, mate. Paul. Isn't that nice? Parker 51, Dove Gray, 1959, Left Oblique, Waterman Mysterious Blue. He's written this note with on some very nice paper. Thank you for this, Paul. Paul contacted me and let me know that he was touched by the fact that I got a PenBBS 556 Galaxy, but I missed out on the Amber. And he had bought several pens, including 2 Amber is a Cat 556s, and so he donated one to me because he felt that I needed to have an Amber is a Cat 556. So thank you, Paul. That's very, very generous of you. Let's get into this lovely pen and see how the Amber is a Cat compares with the Galaxy. I know that there's one advantage right away with the Amber as a Cat, and that is that it will be translucent in the barrel so you can see your ink levels, whereas in the Galaxy you can't. So here's the box, and there's the pen. And wow, that's gorgeous. That's much lighter Amber as a Cat than I've ever had. It almost glows from within. That's gorgeous. Look at that. And you can see what I mean by being translucent. You can actually see that piston moving, and you can see your ink levels. I know exactly what ink to put in this beautiful Amber as a Cat paws motif on that fine nib. That's gorgeous. I've had this 556 in Galaxy with me while I was on vacation, and I wrote with it every day. And I just flew back into town last night, and so I'm going to sit down and do a review of this Galaxy. And part of that review is going to be inking up this Amber as a Cat and giving it a try and comparing the two. Thank you so much, Paul, for this generous donation to Inkquiring Minds. Is much appreciated. And before we get to the PenBBS 556, I want to show you a travelogue of my trip to Ontario and some of our little adventures this past week. Those of you not interested can skip ahead using the chapters. To the rest of you, here's my travelogue. We started our Niagara tour by visiting the calm waters of Port Dalhousie on the south shore of Lake Ontario. It was a little breezy, but the mist was a welcome respite from the 34 degrees Celsius temperatures and the 71% humidity. We also spent time visiting with friends and relatives like my brother Peter and Wynn's brother Forrest, my Uncle Charlie, and Wynn's Uncle Jack. I saw my old girlfriend Jennifer and cousins Frank, Hannibal, Boris, Kat, and Dreamboat Jeannie. We saw some very wet blue Americans invading the Canadian Falls and decided to chase them. We boarded the Canadian Red Boat and chased them past some very wet yellow Americans until we passed the blue Americans to starboard, who were looking very wet but very happy. We sailed on into the mist and got drenched ourselves in an exhilarating maelstrom from the Canadian Falls and had a thoroughly delightful time. Oh yes, and I bought an old fountain pen. And that was our whirlwind tour of Niagara. Back again in Alberta today. And you may well be asking, why are these pens in this plastic bag? Well, before we get to the PenBBS 556, I wanted to show you some tips on how to travel in an aircraft with fountain pens. And this is how I took my pens to Ontario and back. I packed them in this Ziploc bag to protect my Lockbee Voyager from any spillage. And I took both cartridge converters and piston fillers. And here are the 4 Galaxy pens that I took. There's an Asvine P20 piston filler, an Admoc M800 piston filler, of course the PenBBS 556 piston filler, and my Moonman M800 cartridge converter, all in Galaxy. I actually recommend traveling with a vacuum filler like this Asvine V126, but I wanted to prove that converters and piston fillers can travel without leaking as well. Cartridge pens, not so much, because there's no way to get the air out of a cartridge once it's unsealed. If you must travel with cartridges, only travel with sealed cartridges, new cartridges like this one. And if your cartridge is half full, just toss it away before you fly. The reason fountain pens are vulnerable to leaking on an aircraft is simple physics, that air can compress and expand, but water cannot. If you have a pen half full of ink and half full of air, when the air pressure changes on an aircraft, the air can expand inside there. It has nowhere to go inside the pen, so it pushes the ink out as it expands. The simple solution is just don't travel with pens that have any air in them. Only travel with full pens. So that means either filling your pen before you fly or emptying it completely before you fly. But there's a better solution than that. Just empty the pen of its air. Most vacuum fillers, like this Asvine V126, have a special valve that closes off the nib and the feed from the ink supply. You open it up, it pulls that valve back, and you can write with the pen. Then when you're done, turn it nib up, give it a tap, close that valve, just like that, and that seals that nib. And therefore, if you're on an aircraft, that air that's inside there will expand, but that ink has nowhere to go because it can't get through that valve. That's why vacuum fillers are so great for travel. But what about a piston filler? Well, here's a piston filler. This is the Asvine P20. It's a lovely fountain pen that has an ink window, so you can see this happening. So this pen is about half full of ink right now. I've written with it quite a bit while I was away, and so you can see that there's some air in there, and there's the ink, and there's the air. So what we want to do is force that air out the top of the nib. Hold the nib straight up and start turning the piston knob at the bottom, and that will make the ink rise up. There it is, rising past the ink window. If you don't have an ink window, don't worry. Just keep turning it and watch the top of the section, the bottom of the feed, for where it starts to bubble. There. You see all that ink starting to well up there? Then just put the cap back on. There's no air left in this pen. The piston will be out just slightly, but that's fine. I did that with all of these pens. Here's one with no ink window. This is the Admoc M800, and I just pushed the piston up and burped it, basically. It's like burping a baby.
Wow, there was more in there than I thought.
Just get the air out of your pen. Here is the PenBBS 556 piston filler, no ink window. Turn it around and turn that piston until ink wells up into the feed, and put the cap back on. With the cartridge converter, here is the Moonman M800. If your cartridge converter is down here and is mostly air, not ink, just turn it around, turn that converter all the way up until you get bubbles. In this case, this cartridge converter is almost empty of ink. Then I put all 4 of these pens in this Ziploc bag, put it in my Lockbee Voyager, and went on my aircraft with no issues. When I opened them up afterwards, there wasn't a single drop spilled inside the cap. Now to the PenBBS 556. I'll show some parts and features of this pen, some size comparisons and measurements, and then provide a writing sample. And then I'll talk about what I like and what I don't like so much about this fountain pen. Overall, it is a medium-sized pen that is slightly larger than a Leonardo Momento Zero. Here it is with my blue Hawaii, and slightly smaller than the Leonardo Momento Zero Grande. And there are the 3 pens all lined up. From the top, we see a pagoda shape point on the top finial of this pen, which is reminiscent of some of the pagoda shapes that PenBBS has been enamored of late. Here is the 2023 Year of the Rabbit PenBBS 548 piston filler, and it has that pagoda shape on the top finial as well. Instead of copying the conic shape of the Momento Zero from Leonardo, PenBBS has done their own homage to their Chinese pagoda and put that pointed shape on the top finial with a nice little lip on it as well. It's not just a simple shape. Then there is a gold ring which holds the clip in place, and the clip is new for PenBBS. At least it's new to me for PenBBS. I've never seen a model with this type clip. It reminds me of a seashell in this bottom shape right here, and the top. It tapers down in the center, and it's very springy and very usable and very attractive and elegant. I like it a lot. And of course, here is the Galaxy resin, which I'm just so crazy about. Look at that chatoyance and sparkle in that Galaxy. It's just gorgeous. And in the barrel as well. You get dark tones and light tones. And there's a nice wide cap band that has PenBBS on the front, a Chinese dragon or character of some sort on both sides, and then 556 made in PRC, People's Republic of China. It makes me wonder whether they've been directed to say PRC instead of China, or even Shanghai, because in 2023 they said Shanghai on the pen. The cap tapers up to that cap band, the cap band tapers down to the barrel, very smooth transition, and then the barrel tapers down to a gold ring which separates the barrel from the blind cap piston knob, and we have a matching pagoda-shaped end finial. Very attractive. The cap unscrews with 1 and about a quarter turn to reveal a nice large tapering section with a rim on the top and a rib on the bottom, and a large section band that has PenBBS Type A nib engraved on that band upside down. This is odd. When you're writing with the pen, it's upside down. So the writing on the nib is right side up that way. The writing on the gold band is upside down. I don't know why that gold band is there. They could have engraved something nicer than just a public service announcement that this only takes Type A nibs from PenBBS. It's like a little warning that should be on the manual instead of on the pen itself. And there is the PenBBS number 6 size steel mini Fude fine nib in gold tone with PenBBS since 2005, a script F and China and that border work. But this is the interesting thing about this nib. It's slightly turned up at the tip. That's called a Waverly style tip. I call it a mini fude nib because it gives you that fude kind of characteristic in a miniature form. And there's the black plastic feed. The nib and feed are part of a nib collar assembly that unscrews for swapping, maintenance, or replacement. The piston does turn, and of course, because I burped all the air out of it, it burped ink all over me, of course. The cap doesn't go over that ring that separates the piston knob from the barrel, unfortunately. So this pen I don't classify as being postable. It makes it too long anyway. In the hand, unposted, it's very, very comfortable. And I love that thick, slight taper and that little rim on the end to keep your finger from sliding off the end of the section. Those threads are not sharp at all, and it's a very, very comfortable pen in the hand. I purchased this pen on the PenBBS official store on Etsy for $30.99 US and $6 shipping. I'm going to show you how to disassemble this pen, remove the piston, and clean it and maintain it. And then we'll look at some size comparisons. So now let's take this PenBBS 556 piston filler apart. Take the cap off. The section unscrews. And there you see there's an O-ring that helps seal the barrel. And this is as far as you really have to disassemble this pen. Ordinarily, just for maintenance, for cleaning, you can get a cotton swab, put a little silicone grease on it, and just run it on the inside of that barrel and run the piston up and down. But don't unscrew it all the way, because the piston will unscrew from the back. So just run the piston up to the top right there, just below the threads. If you want to swap nibs or clean the nib separately, just get a Kleenex and unscrew the nib unit, and there should be two O-rings, one there and one at the back on this nib unit. Otherwise you might find some leakage. Now to remove the piston assembly, unscrew the piston rod until the piston's at the very top, and I measured the flats on the sides of that piston assembly, and it measures out at 8 millimeters. The only wrench I had that was close to 8 millimeters is this Asvine wrench. The opening here was less than 8 millimeters, so I ground it down with my Dremel grinder to get it to open right at 8 millimeters. And now it fits. So I'll put the wrench on those flats. I always push it down, hold it like that, and then screw the piston knob down on top of the wrench lightly, because that's acrylic against metal and I don't want that to break or split. And then grab the barrel and turn left counterclockwise to loosen, and you can pull the piston assembly right out, just like that. Leave the wrench attached to the piston assembly. There's no reason to detach this any further than this. You got the barrel free. This ring comes off, so I always leave it right on the assembly so I don't forget it. And there you have your barrel clear for cleaning, rinsing, drying with a cotton swab, and there are your component parts apart. Now we can add a little silicone grease or oil to those two rings on the piston, and I put the piston back in the barrel, and I turn the barrel around a few times and run it up and down to spread that silicone around. And then I'll put another drop of silicone oil right on those threads just to seal the back end of the piston, and then we can grab the wrench and turn the barrel. I always turn the barrel rather than the wrench so that it doesn't over torque. Once we get it tight, just give it a small, snug, tight turn. Release the piston knob and you can get your wrench off, and then you can close that piston back down again. This is another good place to put some silicone oil right on those threads to prevent any section leakage, and on that silicone O-ring. Don't put any silicone on any part of this nib unit. We don't want to hinder ink flow at all. And that's what silicone oil and grease does. I'm just going to grab my tissue and grab it on the sides of the nib. These fins on these PenBBS plastic feeds are very fragile So don't grip on them at all. I grip on the nib instead. That goes back in the section, and we give it a turn until it's snug. And we're clean and maintained and ready to fill it. Measure the weight of the pen without the cap, and we get 15.85. Press tear, turn the piston knob until the piston is all the way to the top. Dip the nib and the top of the section in the ink and turn the piston knob slowly. If you want an absolutely full fill, give the pen a little bit of a tap to tap all of that ink from the feed down into the barrel, and then turn the piston knob and keep your eye on the top of the section, the bottom of the feed, for bubbles and air. See those bubbles coming out? And when it starts to well up with ink instead of bubbles, there, like that, I have pushed all the air out of that barrel. And I can turn it back into the ink again and give the piston the rest of the turn. And we weigh the pen again, and we see we get 1.45 milliliters of ink, which is about right. 1.5, 1.6, something like that. Cap the pen and you're ready to write. And here we are with the PenBBS 556 piston filler with an Asvine P20 piston filler, an AdMock M800 piston filler, a Moonman M800 cartridge converter, and an Asvine V126 vacuum filler. Now let's look at them posted. And here they are posted. I'm not even going to attempt to post the 556 because it just doesn't. The Asvine P20 does post very precariously. It actually attaches to the back of that pen, making it very, very long. The AdMock M800 is a clone of the Pelican M800, and therefore it posts very, very nicely indeed. This is a lovely pen posted. The Moonman M800 is a clone of the Leonardo Momento Zero, so it posts very nicely as well. And the Asvine V126 is a clone of, well, sort of semi-clone of the Pilot 823 vacuum filler, and it posts very nicely as well. My Asvine P20 piston filler has a Kaigaloo long blade nib on it currently. The AdMock M800 has a Bach number 6 size steel nib on it. My Moonman M800 in Galaxy has a Leonardo steel stub nib on it. Now let's look at them unposted. And here they are unposted. Now let's look at some measurements, and I'll be back with a writing sample. And before I write with the Galaxy 556, I want to fill up the Amber is a Cat 556 that I got from Paul Harrison of Australia. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate your kindness. And we're going to fill this pen up with my favorite ink to put in an Amber is a Cat. It's Diamine Ancient Copper. I'm getting low on this one, but I've already purchased another bottle of it because I use it so much. It's a beautiful reddish brown that matches this pen precisely. So I'm measuring the pen weight, 15.74 grams. We press tear, and we're going to have to tilt this bottle to get the ink out of it. Yeah, I didn't have enough ink in this, so I'm going to get out the new bottle. So that filled okay. I'm just going to show you a little trick here where you can get a full fill with your piston filler. Just like burping your pen before you fly, while you're filling your piston filler, you can turn it up after filling it the first time and give it a tap and turn the piston. You'll see that it still has some ink inside the section. I'm moving the piston back and forth, and it's sucking all that ink out of the feed. There we go. I can actually see through the barrel that there is some air in there. I'm going to turn that piston knob, turn it there. It's starting to well up in the feed. So I've pushed all of the air out of it, put it back down into the bottle, and turn the piston back. And now there should be no air in this system whatsoever. Wipe off the section, and look at that, 1.63 milliliters of ink. That's pretty good. So now let's do the writing sample with the Galaxy. This is Clairefontaine 90 GSM paper, and this is the PenBBS 556 piston filler in Galaxy. And it has a number 6 size steel fine mini fude nib. Let's check the wetness. Very, very wet. Very, very smooth. This is the smoothest and wettest PenBBS fine nib right out of the box I've ever experienced. I didn't need Doug's 7 strokes to inky happiness to make it wetter at all. That technique is just pressing down on the nib without springing it 7 times and giving it 7 strokes. I'm not going to do it too much here because it's already wet enough. But you give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 strokes, and you end up with a much wetter pen. It works on the PenBBS nibs because they typically are dry right out of the box because they cater to the Eastern writer, and they like their pen nibs drier because they're writing kanji characters. But in the West, we like a wetter nib experience. So I think now what they're doing is they're allowing them to be a little bit wetter right out of the box. I'll find out and test my theory by testing this nib, which I've just inked, in a moment. But let's talk about the ink in this Galaxy right now. My favorite bright blue ink for a Galaxy pen is Iroshizuku Asagao. It's a beautiful bright blue ink. Just lovely, this writing experience. As I say, I've been writing with this all week, and I'm really, really enjoying this nib. As to line variation, well, it's fairly stiff. Chinese steel, you don't get much line variation out of these nibs. But because it's a mini fude, you end up getting a slightly thicker vertical line than you do horizontally. And I've checked this line with my nib width tool, and I'm getting a 0.5 millimeter line, which is a Western fine. And for our quote, and for some reverse writing, yeah, it's very scratchy actually and very dry. And for some quick writing, I've had no issues with that feed keeping up with this very nice, wet, smooth pen. Now let's try again with the Amber is a Cat 556 piston filler, and this one's called Amber is a Cat. And again, a number 6 size steel fine nib mini fude. Check the wetness. Oh, this one's even wetter than that one. Line variation, not much to speak of. Line width, slightly thicker. This one is between 0.5 millimeters and 0.6 millimeters. Oh, this is nice. And some reverse writing, not at all. Quick writing, yeah, no issues whatsoever. So what do I think about these fountain pens? Well, I'm just really over the moon with both of these pens. This one, because I'm so in love with the Galaxy, and the fact that this is a brand new piston filler model from PenBBS, one of my favorite fountain pen manufacturers. I haven't seen anything really new from them, a new model, in a year and a half or so. The last new model pen that I reviewed from them was the PenBBS 548 Year of the Rabbit special pen. This is a really quite a wonderful pen. It's unusual, but it's a metal body, hefty pen, writes beautifully. Probably the best year of pen I've seen from PenBBS over the years that I've been collecting them. But that's the last thing I've seen from them, and I'm thrilled that we're seeing a new model, a new clip. I like the overall design. I like that they've added a Chinese motif pagoda top and bottom finial. Nice large cap band, beautiful section. The nibs are indescribable. They're just, you have to write with one. They're just beautiful, smooth writing experiences, and I just love the mini fude. I'm not much of a fan of their other nibs, and these two colors, Amber is a Cat and Galaxy, are my favorites. There are a couple of issues that I have with this pen model, however. Number one being that it doesn't post at all. Find a way to get that cap to post to here, and you'll get a lot more fans of this model, that's for sure. The other issue is that there's no ink window. I think that PenBBS ought to really look seriously at the Asvine P20 and see that ink window right there. You can design it so that it's on the outside of the cap or is hidden by the cap. I don't mind either way, but an ink window, especially in something like the Galaxy, would be a really welcome feature of this new model pen. I have to say thanks go out to Jilong Su, who is the main designer and head of PenBBS, for continuing to make excellent products. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this new model. And thanks go out to Paul Henderson of Australia.
Australia, 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 we love you, honey.
Thank you, mate. Really appreciate the Amber is a cat coming all the way from Oz. And I will write with it over and over, and whenever I do, I'll think of you, Bruce, for being so generous. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote, mate.
I made this.